Good evening. I am Hina Goswami, editorial consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. It is a pleasure to welcome each one of you to this enlightening panel discussion on our latest report, What Indian Parliamentarians Think of AI. This report is a crucial component of the broader Emerging Technologies and AI, Governance and Policy Landscape initiative led by IGPP. Our mission within this initiative is to actively engage in the shaping of AI regulation with a commitment to fostering the development of robust, adaptable, and organic frameworks that ensure the efficacy and sustainability of artificial intelligence. Embracing a multifaceted approach, our initiative places emphasis on awareness, collaboration, and innovation, drawing insights from diverse stakeholders such as lawmakers, industry experts, researchers, and social scientists. Today's panel discussion represents a key facet of this initiative to discuss the level of awareness among Indian parliamentarians about artificial intelligence and what are the implications of it. To put into context, let me just quote some of the findings of our report. When the parliamentarians were asked what do they understand by AI, 86% of parliamentarians said they were aware of the basic definition of AI, which is that AI is a technology that allows machines to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. However, 14% parliamentarians believe it to be a computer program used for storing data. Similarly, when posed with a question on examples of AI technology, 95% of respondents recognized all of the options mentioned, that are content recommendation on social media platforms, voice assistants like Siri and Alexa and others. However, when asked whether they understand how AI systems work, a whopping majority of 89% were not aware of the foundational working of the AI system. Similarly, a significant portion of 62% admitted their lack of awareness of the role of data in AI systems. To discuss these findings, we are joined by esteemed panelists, Professor Balaraman, Ravindran, and Dr. Chiranjiv Roy. Professor Balaraman Ravindran is the head of Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence, IIT Madras. He's also the head of Center for Responsible AI. Dr. Chiranjiv Roy is the Vice President and Global Head of Data Sciences and Applied AI, Course 5I. Dr. Roy's leadership has been instrumental in shaping innovative solutions and consulting services among a range of industries. I welcome you both to this discussion, and I'm confident that through this panel discussion, there will be enlightening discussion and thought-provoking questions will be raised. Thank you for joining us today. So I open the floor by asking an open-ended question to both of you. Why is it important for Indian parliamentarians to have basic understanding of AI before they embark on a journey of AI regulation and governance?
So, I mean, there are a lot of complex issues that the parliamentarians debate about. And quite often, even when they are making decisions on, say, something like drone technologies or things like that, I mean, we would expect them to have some kind of basic understanding of what is the topic that they are actually discussing in the parliament and what are the impact of it. But it becomes even more crucial when we talk about AI. It is not like people need to understand the technical nuances of artificial intelligence. They don't need to know what is the difference between supervised learning and unsupervised learning and all of these things. Right? What they need to know really is the impact AI is going to have, and it is not like an esoteric technology. Right? AI is a technology that is going to have an impact on almost all facets of even everyday life and different applications and so on and so forth. Right? So if you think of how computers are now, where it's impossible to think of anybody doing their job, without having some access to computers or like that, right? So AI is going to become a technology that's going to impact each and every job that we do as we go along. Right? So when you're going to start, thinking about regulating this technology, you have to understand that it's going to have an implication on almost everything out there. If it's not just enough to say, oh, by the way, I'm just going to have some certification requirement for, large language model. But then you have to understand, what does this mean? Okay, how will it affect research? How will it affect education? How will it affect publishing? How will everything? Right? How will it affect the legal profession and so on and so forth? There's so many nuances that people need to understand. And even when you're not talking about the, the technical understanding of AI, you need to have understanding of impact and reach of what this set of technologies can do. So I think it's important in that sense. Right? I mean, we don't really need them to understand cryptocurrency when they talk about making a legislation on blockchain, right? But AI is something slightly different in the sense that it affects everyday life. So they need to have a little bit more understanding.
Great, sir. Quite essential viewpoints. I'll talk from an Indian perspective, right? So India has always been a service providing nation. We do brilliant service across. You start from the era of East India Company, right, till today, right? We produced world's best service providers of the world, right? That means we are globally competitive, basically, right? The boom has always been from here, right, on this part. So, but from a societal nature, there are a few things that parliamentarians also, as Ravindran sir said, it needs to be, you don't need to create a new blockchain. You don't need to be a hands-on coder to be a blockchain coder to create a legislation, right? There is already work happening in data privacy. So trust, global competitiveness, social economic benefits, and informed decision making. These are the minimum 4 things that parliamentarians generally do. Now, how it transforms to AI, right? In terms of decision making, they need to know, as an AI would be able to give them the knowledge. It will be able to tell its potential as well as its limitation, right? It's like the atom bomb, right? It was not created to, it was nuclear fission. It's a science experiment, right? Now, some people make it, there are countries who have made masses out of it, and they run the entire country on the nuclear fuel, right? Some people, and the other part always is to use it for devastation. So the potential and limitation both needs to be understood, and that's where they would be able to do informed decision making. So regulation activities, right? So it can help them potentially understand the policies which are relevant and which policies might not be. One of the most important things as of today, because there is a lot of shift due to the rift between US and China. So the global competitiveness, because we are the only 2 competitive nations in terms of services, right? One is China in terms of manufacturing, right? And India in terms of services, right? If we align to artificial intelligence, which is through definitely a top-down approach, which is parliamentarian, right? From the parliament, it goes down to the entire society, right? To be precise, it will definitely put us in the position. Yes, pockets are always happening. There is a lot of work which is going around. NASCOM and so on and so forth are already working from it. And but at a mass scale, only parliament can do it. And then for which all parliaments need to be, or parliamentarians need to be at least having an understanding of what it can do and what it cannot do, basically, at least from a regulation level. Finally, is the socio-economic benefit, right? So the societal well-being, there is a very less discussion in India which is happening around the global sustainable development program. Sri Narendra Modi ji has been to the global councils, right? There is a picks and pockets of work, but across India, there is a lot of work which is still pending, and that would automatically bring socio-economic benefits. I think these are the 4 things in my mind, as in in this aspect.
One of the important findings of our report has been that policymakers, parliamentarians have a negative perception of AI. They think that it will supersede human intelligence itself, right? Do you think this is also a result of the limited understanding or awareness of AI? And then there's another related question that I have, that they were able to tell that what are the daily examples of how AI is being used in their daily lives. For example, content recommendation, for example, Siri, Alexa, they were aware of it. But then they were not aware of how data plays an important role. So I have this question, how much of understanding is good enough understanding, and these gaps of understanding where through which they have a negative perception of the technology, do you think they will have an impact on how data governance is regulated in India, or the trajectory of AI regulation and policy making?
No, absolutely. It is of a concern, not just parliamentarians, right? A large mass of the society, right, is still unaware about AI. Again, whenever something new comes into the world, right, you call it the World War, you call it, as in most of the inventions which has been done, the larger part of inventions which follows in a society has always been, this is my purview, that it has always happened during the world wars, the first and the second, right? If you collectively look at most of them. Now, this is a new theme, right? And whenever something happens, the negative perception is always built. That is how the human mind actually looks at. So influencing misinformation is sensationalized by the media, right? There is very less amount of media which does not portray the positive part of the game. So that is there. Limited exposure is there. Applications and its benefits, right, has been very limited in coming into limelight with these people. So there is no direct engagement. So hence there is limited exposure. There is always concern over disruption, and it can fear of job displacement. So every time that we talk about AI will take 1,000 jobs, 1 million jobs, but it has created n amount of Instagram influencers. Otherwise, you would not be giving awards for creativity. Correct? So those are the positive ones nobody talks about. So it's the fear of the disruption which and its impact on the society, which stopped them and lacks due to the awareness of the potential of AI, right? The success stories are never highlighted, and I personally think that there needs to be a lot of balanced dialogues, the way that IGPP is doing, right? In one sense, right? It has to increase multifold, basically. It's the importance of balanced discussion, which is very important across the society, right? Not just in a few pockets where data scientists and researchers are involved, right? Or basic people are involved. Data, at the final point, we have never been concerned about data, but the data privacy took us multi-fold, and it's not just India, everywhere in the world, right? Europe took long time if they're a balanced economy, right? They have taken a huge amount of time to come out, and they still don't have the actual Data Privacy Act, which is the GDPR, right? What they have. Is it the best one? Nobody knows, right? But it still secures, right? But the importance of data and the use of data to monetize it for societal purpose has not come out too well. Hence, AI is always projected as something can take out jobs, something which can be a sensational deep fake, those kind of things which have come into picture. This is my view.
So the biggest challenge for us when we are trying to create this perception of AI is that most of the examples and most of the success stories or failures or dangers people are quoting are all coming from the Western media. Right? People have not turned around and looked at, hey, what can be the impact of this technology in India? People are talking about job losses, right? India doesn't have enough teachers. India doesn't have enough doctors. And what are we talking about? Job losses, right? I mean, if you are able to get to the masses at scale, if you're using this AI technology, and we are able to multiply the impact that one person can have, right? So when people talk about this ideal ratio of teacher students or to doctors to patients or doctors to the population, AI will help you flip the balance in a big way, right? So we're looking at much of the narrative that is coming from the Western world, they perhaps do not apply to India, right? So we should have an inward-looking, reassessment of this technology, right? What it is going to do for the Indian society. So we should think about it, right? And likewise, there are a lot of other questions about dangers of using AI and data privacy and other issues that people talk about, which again do not quite apply the same way to India. In fact, we are very happy giving away our data. If you think about how Indians do it, so we have to be educated about the value of data and all that. And but that is another issue. So let's not even get there. You are talking about this negative perception of AI among the parliamentarians. Whether it will affect, it is going to affect, right? So people are going to think, hey, yeah, if I allow AI to come in, it's going to take away all the truck drivers' job. So I should make sure that AI is not good. Yeah, sure. I mean, AI is not a monolithic technology. Maybe if you want to regulate in one sector where there could be a adversarial impact on India, but we should make sure that we are not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We have to really start thinking about the impact for the India. And like Dr. Chiranjiv was saying, right? So you should, organizations like you, right, like IGPP, should enable these dialogues and certainly not transport the Western view to India, right? So I want you to localize the discussion, make sure that we are talking about Indian.
Thank you, sir. To my next question, as I would say scholars, accomplished scholars working in the field of AI and developing tools for it, what are your expectations from policymaker or aspects that you think they should definitely know about, be concerned about?
So one thing people should accept, I mean, there are so many things that I could talk about, but one thing that you should know is that AI is not a single thing, right? So it's not like automobiles, right? So automobiles is a lot more narrow domain, right? Than what we talk about AI. AI is like calculus. So you can't say that I'm regulating calculus, right? So so you have to be very careful about when you say you're regulating AI. It has to have a lot to do with the intent, right? You can't regulate the technology itself. You can regulate how people want to use the technology. It can be, you can come up with regulations for AI, say in the BFSI sector, in the finance sector. You can come up with regulations for AI in healthcare, so on so forth. And if somebody is using AI to create harm, then just by creating a fake image is not illegal. But if you're using the fake image to benefit in some way or to cause harm to somebody in some way, then it becomes a criminal act. So we have to be aware of a bunch of these issues, right? And I believe that regulation should take a very holistic approach, right? You can't have just one ministry talking about regulating AI, because you would want the finance ministry to come and talk about the impact of AI in the BFSI sector. You would want the health ministry to come and talk about the impact of AI in healthcare, right? It can't be just one person, one arm of the government talking about. It should be more of a whole of government approach in looking at this. And that is something that people have to keep in mind, and that the regulations and other things that they're putting in place shouldn't stifle technology, shouldn't increase the cost of adoption of technology to such a level that it becomes unaffordable for people. So what do I mean by that? GDPR was mentioned earlier, right? So what happened with GDPR is that for putting in place some of these safeguards that GDPR asks for, right? So companies have to invest a lot more. And that is going to increase the cost at which they can make these things available to the market. Right? So similarly, if we start saying that, you have to put in so many safeguards in place, we have to look at that we are really protecting. We shouldn't make it too expensive for companies to be able to provide services to the Indian market. I mean, they might be able to do this. Some companies might be able to do this. Maybe the Googles and Microsofts of the world might be able to uh, achieve the absorb the additional cost, but that might make it a little harder for others to. So all of these things have to be taken into account when we come up with these regulations, and make sure that we still keep a level playing field for homegrown.
Absolutely. If I think my perspective always starts from the World War, right? So if Alan Turing would have not developed the machine which can crack the code, to this, the world story would have been very different. But please remember the fact that it was Winston Churchill who took the bet. Yes, of course, as in he could have taken hundreds of other routes as well, right? So world history has always changed when politicians who are visionaries, right, and have taken stands differently. We know about GPT-4 today, but do we know how GPTs have been evolved? How much of data that, so it has learned every data which is there on YouTube. It has learned every data which is there on Wikipedia. It has learned maybe my personal GitHub work, right? Dr. Ravindran's personal work on GitHub, right? Or anything that is on the internet. 25 years back, we had the same thing with Google, right? It made its own. Now, Google is used by multiple people for multiple forms, right? You can make a bomb out of it. You can make a mystery out of it, right? Whatever it is. Now, I think my expectations from the policymakers, because that's where the policymakers and the balanced, informed and forward-thinking regulatory environment is to be made, right? As being said, I think education, awareness, ethical for frameworks, which can promote a deeper understanding of AI technologies at the minimal of the cost. We already have Bhashini, which has already been launched, right? It should be made as public as possible. Basically, I'm sure there are multiple people who are working out of it, and there will be more services which will be coming out of it. Basically, I don't think all three of us have ever read the entire insurance policy document. We just know that it protects us with something, unless something happens to us, right? Who will tell me in summary in which circumstances this policy will be applicable? This insurance policy that I bought, I don't know. Maybe somebody who is technically knowledgeable with insurance as a product might be able to know. So there are multiple nuances which can come into picture. So we bring those ethical guidelines, privacy, fairness, transparency principles, should be regulated by the policymakers, but with usage of bodies like IGPT and others who can bring up with the framework, and that can be actually utilized, read, discussed, conversed, and then put him into picture, basically, right? Yes, ethical frameworks are required for doing everything that we want, right? We still are developing our data privacy norms, but you cannot stop innovation for doing that. Basically, you cannot stop it, right? In this case, right? So you need to support for innovation, right? You need to build that infrastructure, because if you develop that infrastructure with respect to research, innovation, and there is a lot of money which is being put in, right, today. But more than the money part of the game, it has to be a collaborative game, I would say, right? Across the entire fraternity. That's important, right? We need to bring in some more. We have talked about data governance, right? So I'll not go more deeper into it. I think skilling and education is the most important thing that is important at this juncture, because we are producing, India has been always producing software talent, people who are good in coding, right? But the logic and the frame, now if ChatGPT can start writing the code. Whether it is writing a good one or bad one, I'm not debating on that part. But we need to be focused more on the logic part of the game. And that has to start from the bottom part of the society. Be a structure for IITs, right? When you think structurally, when you think like a constructive way, logical way, but at a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 college level, right? It is still not there. We are trying to build more and more coders, basically, at the end of the day, right? So that system, at least from an UGC level, should be debated, if not, and discussed, if not changed, right? To be precise. Of course, there are few autonomous colleges who do their own way, including IITs, but at a large societal level, it is not there, right? So that can be facilitated by the parliamentarians. And then finally, the societal impact, right? We all know that societal impact is going to be very large, right, in terms of benefits that can come into picture. But is more important is the transparent implementation. So there has to be transparency in AI applications which are getting built. What is this product doing? The product summary has to be very discussed and detailed, because most of the products which gets created, we have seen the Uber fiasco, right? The way that they manage the algorithms and so on and so forth. So yes, if it can be documented, if you can, and that's where American parliamentarians are challenging the Facebooks and others of the world, right, on this part. Where have you written? How much of data have you collected? What kind of algorithms are you using? Are you following the PII, right? So I think the transparent implementation, right, if we ask for the people who are doing it, I think that will make it much more better. And only Parliament can do from that perspective.
Now, to my last question, although part of it has already been answered in our discussion, but what strategies and initiatives should be implemented to enhance the understanding and awareness of AI among parliamentarians, particularly in terms of bridging the gap in knowledge regarding the role of data in AI systems and the multifaceted need for regulating data collection and usage for effective AI governance?
So I think we couple of decades back, we had literacy missions, which were started in India, right? Because as we talk about, we're talking about 140 crore people, 140 crore plus people, right? We need to have regular workshops and seminars at across levels, right? Which should involve parliamentarians as well, right? As Dr. Ravindran said, you need to know the science. You cannot control calculus, right? And in this world, it is the data science. You cannot control probability, right? So if you cannot probability, you have to learn it. You need to have hands-on sessions in order to do that, right? You need to have policy simulation exercises. For example, when you do a war policy, right? You simulate the policies and try to find out what is the impact of a certain decision on taking a war or doing a war. So you can create a controlled, risk-free environment, right, in doing that activity. You need to have transparent AI initiatives, as I said, probably. You observe it firsthand, right? And then without biasness, try to bring in the challenges and the benefits of the AI implementation in public services. Because public services will be the most beneficiary and it impacts the holistic nature, right? You can attach it with the global sustainability development programs, basically, but there are public services in bits and parts of details at a central level, at a regional level, at a at least even at a ward level, right? As a governance policy works, right, on this part. You need to facilitate more stakeholder forums, basically, right, and bring in multiple parties, right, including the parliamentarians, right? And that would yield you with a lot of not just technical details, but also have a lot of policy briefs which can bring transparency into the nature, right? The ethical considerations, your regulatory challenges, right? It can brief them about what can be without overwhelming them with technical details. Because data science always, till date, has been very technically dominated field, or at least the perception has been made, right, in that way. But now we can see the use of it being utilized in forms of, let's say, natural language processing, which is Bhashini and so on and so forth. So it can go out to the mass. You do not need so much of technical knowledge to know, right? And finally, I think it's the AI's ethics and the society, which both have to bring in together. I think educational awareness building activities and the broader impacts has to be very much aligning to the system, right? These are the few things which are very important, right? Which will require coordination and commitment from everybody, right? But it has to go top down in a society.
The thing that is needed is to encourage our parliamentarians to have a drive to be educated about whatever it is that they are doing legislation on, right? So that drive needs to come from somewhere. So we have to make sure that, I mean, frankly, half the people there sitting there are not, maybe not interested in knowing more. And, some sense your survey had a sampling bias. It was filled in only by people who had a drive to participate in the survey, right? So already you are sampling a slightly skewed set of parliamentarians. So that's one issue. So parliamentarians, right, come from very different backgrounds. I mean, they're literally like a microcosm of India, right? So there will be people who would want to understand things at a slightly higher level. There are people who would have probably done their own research, went out on the web and read something. And there are people who are completely coming in clueless, right? So what we should be doing is creating material for them to consume at a level, not just to understand the technology, but also to understand the interplay of technology and regulations and technology in society, impact of it on the society and things like that at different levels in different languages. So I believe it might be important to tailor this kind of material to the local ecosystem. So if you're going to present this to parliamentarians from say Jharkhand, you should talk a little bit more about how this is going to affect the mining industry than the shipping industry, right? So or even BFSI. So that those kinds of things we have to think about. I mean, how do I work personalize these materials? Because at the end of the day, we are talking about a few hundreds of people that we are tailoring this material, a few thousands, right? Even if you expand this to include not just the MPs but also the MLAs, right? You're talking about a few thousands of people, and we can actually be a lot more nuanced about how we are creating this material. And as long as you can get them to the table, right, or in front of a YouTube video, and they're going to learn about this, I think that can be done, right? But this requires significant amount of effort, and the government already has certain bodies, right, that have been looking at creating this kind of education material. And in fact, we are talking about parliamentarians, but there's another sector that needs this education equally badly. These are the administrators, right, the civil services people. So they also, I mean, there is a significant amount of lacuna of good quality knowledge about the impact of AI on the Indian society. Right? Like I told you, most of the thing that's out there is the narrative is being set by Western interests, right? Not by Indian interests. We have to figure out how we are going to do this to reach out to the civil services people as well. And that is important because they are the ones at the end of the day drafting the law, which the parliament is debating. So the nuances have to come in from them, right? So we have to make sure that whatever education program we put in place should reach out. Right? So, and so from our center, right? So there is the Center for Responsible AI that I have been running for almost a year now, and we have started this exercise of reaching out to people in vernacular language. So in fact, I've been talking to news channels in Tamil, which is the easiest one for me to do locally, and also we are trying to put out accessible material on different kinds of technologies and law and the impact of. So, for example, you can take the existing regulations that's in a particular field, right? How are they being challenged by AI? Or how does it make it difficult for using AI in a particular area because of complying to certain existing? So these kinds of things. So we're putting together all of these reports, and some of these will start appearing in the public domain shortly. Right? So certainly a lot of videos are there trying to explain stuff in a manner that is easily consumable. But then we might want to do a little bit more customization when we are trying to the lawmakers.
I think it's the both the ways. As you should,
Yeah.
IGPP should actually do it unbiased, to be precise, for at least 100 IAS officers. Because those, and Dr. Ravindran said it very well, right? Those are the people who actually write it. If they don't know what to write, what will the other people do? Right? So you can edit whatever you want.
In fact, I'll go a little further, sir. I'll say not just 100 people. I mean, make it part of their training that they get. Right?
Correct.
Teach this to them in Missouri. Right. So have some kind of a module on AI that every IAS officer.
On that optimistic note, we'll end the discussion. Thank you so much for joining.